do exercise. Okay. So I know you guys are learning about this stuff. So just real quick, you guys know that aerobic activity, that's when you have sufficient oxygen. And when you're anaerobic, means your body doesn't have enough oxygen, and so there's a different metabolic pathway. And when you are running, if you're running if you're a trained athlete, you can run at an aerobic pace fairly quickly for a really long period of time. The aerobic system is very efficient, and you'll get lactic acid is one of the byproducts of the system, but your body, it's called lactic, it clears it out, and it clears all the byproducts out, and so it doesn't build into your blood, and you don't get high concentrations. When you cross this threshold where your body is not getting quite enough oxygen to supply the aerobic system, you go anaerobic. And that system is it's much more taxing on the body, and because you don't have the oxygen in your body, you can't clear the lactic acid away, and also you can't clear the byproducts of the production of lactic acid away. One of the big ones is hydrogen ions, positive hydrogen ions. When you're aerobic, you're breathing those out. They're being released from your body. When you're anaerobic, they're flooding your body, and that's why if you start sprinting, you get really tired, you're going as fast as you can, and you try to hold your sprint as long as you can, not only do you feel extreme pain and you want to stop, but also your muscles your form starts to deteriorate. You can't, if you've seen someone that's trying really hard to run fast, it looks terrible. They're running, their muscles aren't firing correctly, and that's because of all this buildup of the byproduct of lactic production. And what I've read is the reason for that is because if that didn't happen, if your muscles still could kind of function properly, then you would start tearing your tendons and your muscle fibers. So it's kind of like a evolutionary thing where you can sprint, but your body won't let you sprint so hard they start ripping your body to pieces. So what I did when I was in college, I did a test where they put you on a treadmill, and you start running at a pace that you can maybe hold for about an hour. Now it's different if you're not a runner, that pace might be really slow, but if you're trained, you have your aerobic system, you can jog fairly quickly, and every 3 minutes, they made the pace a little faster to make it more difficult. And the faster the pace, the more oxygen your body is going to need to keep up, because you're going to have to produce more ATP and to keep that momentum. And every 3 minutes, the physician would prick my finger for a drop of blood as I'm running, and she would analyze the amount of lactate in my blood. And for the first 30 so minutes, the lactate would kind of go up a little bit, and sometimes it'd be pretty consistent though. It never got above, you measure lactate in millimoles per liter, is how I think you measure it. And it was always below that. Like sometimes it'd get 2 to 3, and it would stick around here. And once you cross this threshold where you're no longer getting sufficient oxygen, the blood lactate starts increasing rapidly. And there was a time where I had right around 4, and I'm starting to feel very uncomfortable. And then in the next 3 minutes, she pricked my finger, and I was about at an 8. And then I went for maybe 2 minutes longer, and then I wanted to stop because it was too taxing on my body. It happened. I have a graph of it, and the graph, it was kind of like this. If this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. This is a millimole lactate, and they kind of go up, and then you kind of get this hockey stick exponential thing happening where it just skyrockets. And if you have 8 millimoles of lactate in your blood, it's extreme. You feel terrible. And because all that lactate's in your blood, all the byproducts are in there too. And the main one, these hydrogen ions, aren't being released through the aerobic system, and your muscles start to seize. And this right here is called your lactate threshold. and it's a very good indicator of how fit you are. Not just for running, for any endurance sport. The goal for endurance athletes, one of the goals, is to push this further, so they can maintain a faster pace before they go over their threshold. If you go over your threshold, you're done. Like, you know, if you were doing a race, and say it was 5 kilometers long, and maybe 2 kilometers into the race, you know, you're going too fast for your body. You start just trying to catch somebody, and you don't know this, but your blood lactate starts to accumulate. You're going to feel terrible, and the only way to get your blood lactate down is to slow down. And depending how well trained of an athlete you are, you may have to slow down to like a walk, and it may take you 3 minutes before your lactate is been processed and you're able to use your aerobic system efficiently again. So that'd be a terrible race. You always see people going out too fast, then they just struggle the last kilometer going super slow. And it's because they're battling with their lactate. They're going anaerobic, aerobic, anaerobic, aerobic. You normally wouldn't cross this line unless you're right at the finish of a race, or if you're trying to make little speed bursts in the race that you do for longer events. But to increase this, you running at this pace makes your body more efficient at this pace. You start building better running economy. You use less energy and less oxygen for that pace, and so you can push this further and further and further. Theoretically, there's no limit for improving your lactic threshold pace. So that's why a lot of runners, it's like a lifetime sport, because you've never really reaching your potential. Even people that are in their 30s and 40s sometimes can improve this. Your anaerobic system, like your max speed, your anaerobic system, that's your muscle fibers. They call them fast-twitch fibers quite often because they can contract much faster than the rest of your muscle fibers. And because they contract much faster, they can make you go much faster. But the amount that you have in your body is genetic. You can't, it's a little debatable, but you really can't increase the number or the quantity of fast twitch fibers in your body. Maybe it's slightly, but it's kind of genetic. But some people are really naturally good sprinters. They don't train at all, but they can run 100 meters really fast without any training, so they naturally maybe have more fast twitch fibers than you. The aerobic system, though, you can develop that your whole life. And when you run at a pace where you're purely aerobic, or almost purely aerobic, you're always using maybe a little bit of your anaerobic system, you start improving things like your cells start having a higher density of mitochondria. Like my cells, I've been running for a long time, compared to someone who doesn't exercise, I have way more mitochondria density in the cells of my legs, and I'm able to produce way more ATP than someone who wasn't trained athletes. That's why a lot of, and I'm talking about running, but if you want to improve running quickly, you actually have to run slowly a lot. Even elite, like marathon runners that are the fastest in the world, most of their running is at an aerobic pace. When you run at aerobic pace, that's way slower than the race pace. They're actually building capillaries, increase blood flow into their muscles. They're actually getting more mitochondria. All these things are happening. And if you have more capillaries and mitochondria, then when you go faster, the oxygen you're breathing in you're using more of it. And there's a term called a VO2 max, and that's the volume of oxygen your body can take in. And it's a great indicator for fitness. If you can take in a ton of oxygen, that means your body has a lot of capillaries and mitochondria, and you're using that oxygen for your aerobic system. So if you're untrained, like right now, you guys' VO2 max probably isn't that great. Although you can breathe in a lot of air, a lot of oxygen, you're not using it at the same level that someone who's highly trained is using the oxygen. Well, let me just ask kind of just open the floor to maybe any questions. I don't know exactly what you guys are studying, and maybe I'm a little off topic. Do you have any questions about anything to do with aerobic system? Okay, well, we'll mention this, that a lot of people, they think like short running events, they're not aerobic, they're anaerobic, but that's not true. Like even the mile run, which is about 1,500 or 1,600 meters, people think that's anaerobic, that's like sprinting, but it's not. The mile run is about, if you're well trained, well over 70, most times over 80% aerobic. That's a system that even those fast guys are developing. If you're a 100-meter runner, like Usain Bolt, he's working on his anaerobic. He's actually doing weightlifting. He's trying to build his muscle fibers to make them have more power. And even in a 100-meter sprint, it still has about 20% aerobic. The spot where it changes from like 50-50 is a 800-meter. That's a common race distance. And this race for highly trained athletes is around 50% aerobic, 50% anaerobic. And just to give you a frame of reference, the marathon it depends on the individual, but a lot of it is 97 to 99% aerobic. You almost don't even tap into your anaerobic system. You do a little bit, but almost not at all. Even a 5K is 5 kilometers is about 90+% aerobic. This race here, if anyone's ever tried to run 800 meters fast as they can, or seen elite athletes do it, it's one of the only events where people run it slower in the second half than the first half. Almost every other event, the second half is faster. Especially you're talking about world records and all this stuff. Especially the shorter ones, like 100 meters, it takes 20 meters just to get going. The last 50 meters are like Usain Bolt, he is flying. Same with 200 meters, same with 400 meters. 800 meters, because you're splitting this anaerobic and aerobic, everybody runs it's like 2 laps around a track, runs the first lap much faster than their second lap. Because the first lap, they're pretty much depleting all their system. The second lap, their lactate is going to be high, a lot of times much higher than 4 millimoles, and it's just, a lot of it is a mental game and training your body to clear the byproducts of lactate better than your opponents, because then if you don't clear it well enough, your muscles start failing. A lot of people say this is the most painful running distance you can train for, and it's the most difficult because you need to have a highly functioning anaerobic system and aerobic system. When I say the aerobic system, I don't know if you guys know, people can run all day long. People can run 24 hours if they're aerobic. There's really, theoretically, there's no limit to the aerobic system. Eventually, your muscles start failing. It's not the aerobic system. Your heart, and if you have enough oxygen, you can go, theoretically, there's no limit. Are there any questions? Again, I don't know exactly what you're studying, so I wanted to... No questions? Question?
What is the maximum for an anaerobic system?
The max for how fast you're going, or? A lot of people, it's around like 80 to 90% of your max heart rate. You can keep, you can be aerobic. Again, marathoners, they run a little over 2 hours for a marathon, 42 kilometers. That's almost entirely aerobic. That's at the height of their aerobic system. Those guys, they're like right at 4 milliliters the entire, from the first minute, boom, their lactate is up, and they're at that razor edge, where if they go even like 1 second per kilometer faster, they're going to start accumulating lactate too quickly. So they're highly, highly trained, and they're running at this, like, it is painful from the first step, and it is from the first step to the last step. Okay, well, it's lunchtime, I don't want to, I gotta go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor.